live on my iPad today, so I'm going to see if I can get this any clearer. This might be as good as we're getting. Welcome! If you're new here, hi, I'm Madison. I teach people things like how to connect with their spirit guides, how to access their Akashic Record or their soul's blueprint, and I also teach things like energy healing, and I have a mystery school as well. So if you're new here, hi, welcome, so glad you're here. Today I didn't have a live scheduled, but I've been getting so many cool downloads that I wanted to share with you guys to be able to connect some dots, because I've been having a lot of just moments where the pieces have been slowly coming together for me, and I want to share those with you guys. So let's get into it. We're talking about the 3D to 5D shift today. So I've heard a lot of different people kind of theorize different things about the 3D to 5D shift. This is also referred to as the New Earth split or the Great Awakening period that we're in right now. So I really wanted to figure out, what is the deal? What's going on behind the scenes? What does this actually look like? How do we know kind of what our role on this shift is, and all of that. So I tapped into the Akashic Records, and the Akashic Records is kind of like this infinite database of knowledge and wisdom and guidance that allows you to be able to connect with the spirit guide in a container of light and say, hey, what the heck is a 3D shift? What's going on? What's my part in it? What's my purpose? And you can do a lot more in the Akashic Records, but for the sake of this transmission, that's what I did. And I actually connected with some Arcturian members. And so whenever you go into the Akashic Records, sometimes you connect with more angelic beings, sometimes you might connect with more interdimensional beings. And this transmission came through the Arcturian line, or through the Arcturian Council. So what was explained to me is there is still just going to be one Earth. So it's not necessarily that the Earth is splitting in two and there's going to be a 3D Earth and a 5D Earth. We're all still going to exist on the same Earth, but what's going to happen is more the split of timelines. So if you've ever gone through a timeline shift, you know whenever you jump timelines, sometimes people fall out of your reality, right? That's essentially what this shift is, hi, see you there in the comments, thanks for being here. So as you shift from 3D to 5D, what's going to happen is you are going to start to vibrate a little bit higher, and people who have maybe made soul contracts to stay awake during this time period, they're going to kind of fall out of your world, fall out of your timeline, right? And as that happens, you're going to probably not have to do much. This is not necessarily a time where you have to maybe make an effort to get people to fall out of your timeline. It just kind of naturally happens for people who are not on your same vibrational frequency. They still exist here on planet Earth, but they exist in a completely different timeline where, yeah, they might exist 5 minutes down the road from you, but they're not going to exist in your reality anymore. So that's what it means when we talk about jumping timelines, is it's more there are things that were existing in your reality that no longer exist in this new reality, right? So with that being said, I want to talk about what categorizes the third, fourth, and fifth dimension. So the third dimension is going to be very focused on only things you can see: material possessions, money, greed, status, power, trying to get ahead. The fourth dimension is going to be where you're in the midst of your awakening and you're aware, like, 3D is not all there is, but maybe I haven't had enough to shift in my vibration and my life, my DNA, to fully believe that everything's going to work out in the end, right? So a lot of times in the fourth dimension, you're going through things like dark night of the soul. You're going through things like having to bring up a lot of like old shit that you might have like pushed down. And you're also probably going to be in a hermit phase, and you're probably going to be in a space where it's almost like your reality is blown up. So like for me, whenever I started to do all this work and found out like all this knowledge existed, most of what we've been taught is a lie, it hurt my brain. Literally, even learning things like time is not linear, time is simultaneous, like things like that, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around. And so as you're in that period, that's what categorizes the fourth dimension. So you're aware that like there's these different dimensions, you're really locked into your fourth dimension, and you're doing your healing and you're growing. But when things happen, you might not respond in the fifth density despite being able to access the fifth density. I'll give you an example. So I channel things like the Akashic Records, spirit guides, I can access. I believe I've accessed up to like the eighth dimension. So I very much know that, through my consciousness, I can, remote view, access different, places like the Akashic Records. And in that, what I've really learned is while I can access higher dimensions, where you truly are at vibrationally is how you respond when something goes wrong. So yes, I can access higher dimensions, but the transmission I got was more whenever things go wrong, how you respond kind of determines what density you're actually in. So the other day, I'm at the river, and if you guys follow me on Instagram, I'm at the river or the lake. I'm always by water, right? So I'm at the river, and it's a lot higher than usual, and so I'm going to my usual spot. My usual spot is like covered by water, and in the process, I get caught up on a rock and I fall, and I drop like a lot of stuff, right? What I didn't realize that I dropped until like, I don't know, probably 5 minutes later is my phone. So my phone's in the river. I'm like, I don't even know where it could be. Like, I don't even know how far back I fell. I don't know like what to do. And I know that there's this spiritual gift that people have where they can locate objects that are missing. And so I'm like, oh, it'd be like great if I had that gift. And immediately my guides were like, you do have it, you just never accessed it. So I'm like, okay, can you guys please show me like how to use this gift to find my phone? Because at this point, like the current is so fast, and like, did it get swept away? Probably not. I think it's heavy enough to fall. And so I'm literally just like, okay, Madison, first of all, chill out, because if you're in a mode of panic, you're not gonna be able to freaking find it. So like, let's chill, take some deep breaths, and then let's try to go back to like where we think we were and just like start from there. And it's almost like as I was doing this, I was kind of getting this like green or like hot and cold, right? Like it's almost like I was in some places and my guides were like, this is not, you're really cold right now, right? And then there were some places that I felt like there was almost like a green arrow like directing me to that place, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. You guys, I freaking found my phone. I called in all my spirit guides. I was like, you guys, I am in the middle of nowhere. Like, I have to use offline maps to get to this river. I'm like, I gotta find my phone out of the river. It's the only way, right? So, I mean, I don't know how long my phone's in the river. Probably at least 15 minutes. Honestly, this whole saga goes on, right? I find my phone. It's here. Freaking works. Freaking works. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so crazy. And so in that experience, what I learned is that I'm somewhere between like the fourth and fifth density, because initially I had this kind of frustration of like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? I know that there's like a reason or a lesson, but like, what the heck is it? And I'm still kind of like frustrated. But immediately my instinct is like, I know that if I like call in like higher guidance and like don't let my human brain fucking take over, that like I can figure this out, right? So that kind of showed me my guides were like, you're somewhere between like the fourth and fifth dimension. You do not just exist solely in the fifth dimension. Sometimes when things go wrong, you do things like access those lower dimensions because you haven't fully figured out how to embody and fully shift into that new vibration and frequency, right? So that was super interesting to learn. If you guys are here on the live, drop where you're from in the comments. I'm from North Carolina. I live in a town called Greensboro, North Carolina, which is kind of central North Carolina. And as we continue through the live, I will share with you guys what really categorizes the fifth dimension. So being able to live and access in the fifth dimension, you are aware of things like the soul is eternal. A big thing that I found in what can maybe prohibit people from being able to access things like remote viewing on the Akashic Records is if you have like immense fear of death. Once you start to kind of learn through your spiritual journey that the soul is eternal, and the soul is, going through these different stages, and when the physical body passes on, the soul is not in this space of torment. The soul is in this place of reflection and deciding what to do next, right? So when you're in the fifth density, you're aware that you are a soul and a human or a soul and a human consciousness in a physical vessel, right? And that physical vessel is allowing you to create experiences. And a lot of us, well, all of us came here for a reason. Nobody's like accidentally here on earth. We all came here for a very specific reason, and we all came here with a plan or a purpose or something that we wanted to experience. And so for me personally, I'm somebody who I've had spiritual gifts since I was a kid, and I had no idea what to do with them. I actually didn't know that other people weren't also connecting with spirits until I was probably like about 10 years old. So that was a very interesting way to grow up, right? And so as I have, learned how to channel and connect with different spirits and things like that, I've learned a lot of it is about being able to access higher dimensions and higher levels of consciousness that exist outside of the 3D. And a lot of this you can actually look into like quantum and metaphysical concepts that sort of connect all of the dots. So to give you a little backstory, what's happening right now is we are in this period where every 26,000 years our Earth goes through this cycle where it's kind of like we can re-access the new Earth grid or the new Earth template, which is the original 12 strands of DNA. And so the human template originally was 12 strands of DNA, not 2. And those 12 strands of DNA were able to do things like be telepathic, to be able to remote view, astral travel, all of these things right now that we think like only gifted people could do, everybody could do, right? And so Atlantis was one of the time periods where they were really trying to restore that human blueprint back to 12 strands of DNA, where they had this really evolved technology and consciousness, and they could remote view and teleport and all the things, right? And we're now in that same age, right? That energy of the earth and of the grid is still coming back online there. And so that looks like us having the ability to start tapping into these higher levels of consciousness. So a lot of people have chosen to come be here incarnated right now because they're part of this new earth frequency that is here to anchor in the new earth. What that means is that the matrix is kind of crumbling, with even people who may have been pro-government are starting to be like, okay, yeah, like they're not coming to save us, they don't have good intentions, whatever. And then that's allowing people to kind of seek answers elsewhere, right? And as people start to seek answers elsewhere, they start to realize that there's a lot more to their current reality than what they're being shown or taught, and that we actually have access to a lot more information that we're kind of brought up to believe, right? So as we're going through the process of learning how to access things like our Akashic Records, we're able to get really clear on why do I have gifts? What am I supposed to do with them? Why did I choose to come here? Am I a light worker? Am I a part of the 144,000? And what's my role in this 3D to 5D shift, right? And so for me personally, I tried to kind of shut off my gifts for a while. I actually worked in the corporate world for about 10 years doing HR. And I didn't want to have gifts. I didn't want to be like the weird spiritual girly. And eventually you get to a point where you're just like, okay, well, if the gifts aren't going away, what am I supposed to do? And that led me to finding the Akashic Records and being like, okay, all I knew was that my sole purpose existed in the Akashic Records. And that led me to starting to do readings. That led me to starting to teach classes. That led me to then start to eventually be able to channel information that you can't really find online, right? Because one thing about me is I've always been very much a truth seeker, but I've always very much been like aware that there's a lot of fabrication and a lot of like for the plot type things, right? And so the Akashic Records is a way where I can kind of tap into things and be able to get my own clarity or guidance in a container of light to be able to move forward, right? So I use the Akashic Records to not only help myself and a lot of my clients shift from 3D to 5D, but I've also used the Akashic Records to go in and say, hey, what does my clientele need from me right now? What are things that, I can offer to my clients that are going to allow them to, step to that next level? So if you are interested in things like remote viewing and learning how to do past life regressions, you can access all of that in the Mystery School. You can actually try a week for free. If you just want to kind of dabble in it, see if it's your vibe, you can dabble in it a week for free, and then after that, it's only $22 a month. I also have a lot of courses to teach you how to quantum leap. I have a retreat coming up that is actually teaching you how to tap into things like your soul purpose, but also figure out, okay, now that I have this soul purpose information, what do I do next, right? And that's where channeling of the Akashic Records comes in. So whenever I go in and I do these sessions with my clients, whether it be teaching them or through a reading, we're really trying to figure out what information do we need for next steps for to move forward and to put us on that highest timeline, right? And as soon as we're able to get that information, then we have a clear path forward, and then we can continue to come back in and access that information as we need to. So that is a little bit about the 3D to 5D shift. It's not necessarily going to be two Earths. It's more going to be just different timelines splitting, people falling out of your timeline that have maybe made a decision to stay asleep during this awakening. And that's hard, right? So sending you guys lots of love during this time. Try the Mystery School for a week for free. Quantum Leap into your best life. It's all linked in the show notes. And I will see you guys next episode. Happy healing!